Hey Year 12 and welcome to the next episode of Mathematical Mowbray Movies. Yep, I did call you Year 12 and that's because in today's lesson you will begin the very first part of the HSC course, so congratulations. It still fits within the trigonometry topic, but it's not SOHCAHTOA. I know you're disappointed there, but it is instead, can you guess what that one is? Over here, this is a bear. And this here is rings. So together, we're looking at in today's lesson, bearings. Yep, you can cringe or you can giggle, whichever one suits you best. What do we mean by bearings? Bearings are a way of using angles to show the direction of one location from another. So if, for example, I was floating along on this little life raft here, and I knew that there was a palm tree and a nice little island over here that I was going to be rescued on, so picture this as a looking down on it from a bird's eye point of view, and I knew that north was here, I would have to work out, well, what's the angle at which I'm going to sail my little raft in order to reach that island? And that angle is what we call a bearing. So it's an angle that shows the direction of one location from another. So this would be the bearing of the palm tree from my raft. So of the palm tree from my raft, and that's going to be important as we go through the video. There's two ways of writing bearings. We're going to look at both in this video. The first one is using compass bearings, which uses north, south, east and west. Hopefully you've all seen the compass points before. And the second one is what we call true bearings, and these are a three-figure bearing. And they are only measured from north, so it doesn't matter whether you have to measure a long way round or whether you just measure a short way round, they're always measured from north. So let's begin by having a look at compass bearings first. Hopefully you can remember how to label the 4 points on a compass, and if you can't, I always just remember never eat soggy Weet-Bix. N-E-S-W, and that's how you label going from the top. N-E, never eat soggy Weet-Bix, north, east, south and west. You might just be able to remember them, of course, it's up to you. From here we can also talk about the midpoints between northeast and southeast, southwest and northwest. So we can talk about that this direction here would be northeast because it's pointing halfway in between north and east. This one here would be southeast. Notice that I always put the S or the N first, and that's going to be an important feature when we do these compass bearings. Over here, halfway between north and west would be northwest. Again, notice that my N comes first. Halfway between the south and the west would be southwest. Again, notice that my south comes first. So I always put the vertical direction, whether that is north or south, first, and then I put my horizontal direction, if you like. Not that it's vertical and horizontal, but you know what I mean. East and west second. Now I've put that little note over here for you. Remember, always read from north or south rather than from east or west. Now the question arises, of course, what happens when we're not talking about one of these directions that is, exactly halfway between our 4 compass points? One that measures, for example, something like this. Okay, that's not sort of halfway between or anything like that. How do we measure those angles? So they're the ones we're going to have a little look at now. So here's 4 examples for us. Again, the first thing I'd suggest doing is putting on N-E-S-W. I'm going to put them on all of these while I'm here so that you don't screw up anything or get confused, because it's pretty easy to do so. Let's have a look at this first one. Remember that I'm always going to give a north or a south direction first. So I'm going to look at my angle here and I'm going to say, is this in the northern half of my compass, or is this in the southern half of my compass? And this one here is in the southern half of my compass. So when I'm giving the direction from this point in the middle, I'm going to start by saying this is in a southerly direction, so I write the letter S, and after I've said that it's in the southerly direction, it's actually in the western quadrant, so it's actually over this side here, pointing in the westerly direction. So it's south, but from south it's actually 30 degrees toward the west. So that's how I'd write that particular bearing using the compass bearing. Then I'd have a look at this one. I'd say, okay, let's do a similar thing here. Is this, first of all, I ask myself, is it in the northern half or is it in the southern half? This one here is in the northern half of my compass. So this is going to be north. Now again, I have to say to myself, is it in the easterly or the westerly direction? Well, this one's in the easterly direction from north. And how far is it in the easterly direction? It's 42 degrees east. So this is how I'd write it. Now these two over here are a little bit trickier. Again, I'll do the same process. I say, well, which half is this in? And I can see that this particular one is in my northerly half of my compass, if you like. So I'm going to write that this is north. I need to say how far it is off north. So I actually need to say how far it is off north. Not how far it is off west, but how far it is off north. So I'm going to have to work out what this angle would be. Remember that any right angle, and of course this is a right angle here, is 90 degrees. So if I want to work out this angle here, I'm just going to have to do, and you can't really see my screen, there we go. I'm going to have to do 90, take away 35. So this here is 55 degrees. So my compass bearing here would be north, and it is 55 degrees to the west. A similar thing we need to do down here. So again, you can see, first of all, which half is it in, north or south? Well, it's in the southerly half of my compass. So I'm going to write that this bearing is south. Then I have to say to myself, well, how far off south is it and in which direction? It's obviously toward the easterly direction. So how far is it to the easterly direction? It's not 76 degrees because that's from here. How far is it from here? Again, this is a right angle, of course, which is 90 degrees. So I'd say, well, what is 90? Sorry, there you go. Take away my 76. This angle here must be 14 degrees. So this compass bearing, or this point, is south 14 degrees to the east. Okay? They're compass bearings. Now it's your turn to have a quick go. So here's the first one for you to have a go at. Oh, can you see it there? One thing's a bit weird. There you go. Have a quick go at that question. All right. Hopefully you worked it out. You worked out it's in the southerly half. I should put this on so I don't mess it up, shouldn't I? It's in the southerly half of my compass, so it's going to be south. And how far off south is it? Well, it's 20 degrees off in the westerly direction. So it's south and 20 degrees to the west. So the answer there is D. Here's your next question to have a go at before we look at true bearings. What is the bearing of point A from point B? So from point B means, imagine I'm standing at point B and I'm looking at point A. What is the bearing of that point? Have a go. Alright, this one might have been a bit trickier for you. The first thing to realise is that you're actually talking about this angle here. So you're imagining yourself standing at point B and you're thinking, well, what direction am I looking at or looking into reach point A? Now there's a few calculations here. You need to realise that if I extended this down here to form a straight line, I can calculate this angle. It's 180, because that's a straight line, take away 120. So this angle here is 60. Then, using the alternate angles rule, I can see that this angle here must be 60, because this forms that Z shape, which means they're equal. Then I need to read off, obviously, my compass bearing. So this is the direction that is north. So I'm going to say that this is in the northerly half of my compass, because here would be my compass. Northerly half, and it's pointing in the direction of west, and it's 60 degrees off north. So this answer is actually going to be D as well. Okay, let's look at the second part of this video, and that is true bearings. Now, in a compass bearing, you notice that we always had these letters, north, south, east, west, those sorts of things. In a true bearing, we are only interested in the angle formed by the northerly direction and the particular direction that we're looking in. So if I'm a little person standing here, and there's a point down here that I want the bearing of, if I'm giving a true bearing, I'm interested in the angle formed by that particular direction and the northerly direction. So it's always measured in a clockwise direction around from north. So we've always got that here, always read from north. The other thing I've put down here is that we write angles as 3 figures. What that means is if it's less than 100, which of course has 3 figures itself, even if it's less than 100, say for example it's 75, we put a 0 in front of it because the notation is always written as 3 figures. So obviously if we get to 270 or something, it's fine. But if we've got something less than 100 that's a 2-digit number, we have to add that 0 in front to indicate the size of that angle. Let's have a look at a couple of examples. Okay, here's a question here. Again, you're asked to work out what is the bearing of this particular direction from north. So here's my northerly direction. And I've got to work out what's the angle from north all the way around to the direction that I'm looking in. This is where it's really useful to remember that that a quarter line is 90 degrees, that a straight line is 180, that 3/4 of the way around is 270, and that the full way around, which you won't really need, is 360. So here I'm going to say, okay, I'm measuring to here. I'm told that this bit's 55. I need to do this bit, and since it's a straight line, it'll be 180. So my total true bearing will be 180 plus that extra 55, 180 plus 55, 235. So my true bearing there is 235 degrees. Looking at this next one, let's look at this one here. Again, I'm looking at from north. So I've got to go all the way around to here. I know that this last bit's 32, so that bit's fine, but I need to know what this bit is. Since it's 3/4 of the way around, it must be 270 degrees. So my total is going to be 270 plus that extra little 32. Again, I'll do it in my calculator. 270 plus 32, 302 degrees is my true bearing. Notice there are 3 figures in both cases. Alright, let's have a look at this one. Again, we're looking at what is this particular direction. What's the angle formed by that particular direction and north? Well, here's north, and I'm looking at what's the angle formed from north to that particular point. This one's pretty clear. I don't have to do any calculations because the numbers all work out nicely. This is 80 degrees. But remember, I never write it as just 80. I have to put the 0 in front to use the correct notation. Alright, last one here. Again, like all of the others, I need to work out what is the angle formed by this particular direction and the northerly point. So I'm looking for this angle here. Well, I know that this part here is 90 degrees. This first section here would be 90. And I know that this section here is 67. So I'm just going to do 90 plus 67 degrees. So on my calculator, 90 plus 67 degrees, 157. I should have included an example, and I'm sorry that I didn't, where you'd been given this particular measurement and that you first needed to subtract that from 90 to work out this one before doing your addition. Okay, so I should have done that. Or the other way of doing that is subtracting from 180. If I've just confused you, just ignore what I've said. Alright, so your turn to have a go. This one here says, give the true bearing of point X from point Y. So again, from point Y means I'm standing at point Y and I'm looking at point X and I need to give that particular bearing. Have a go. Okay, so I need to first of all identify that this is north from where I'm standing. So I'm trying to work out this angle here all the way around. It's a bit tricky because I'm not given all the measurements. So again, I need to use my alternate angles rule. I imagine myself drawing a nice little line down here, parallel, and then I use my alternate angles, that is that Z rule, to say that this bit here would be 40. This bit here would be 40. And I know that this bit here is 180 because it's a straight angle. So I do 180 plus 40, which would give me 220. Hopefully you got that one right. And lucky last question. Here we are. What's the true bearing of point R from point S? This is intentionally a tricky one, so give it a shot. Alright, let's see how you went with it. So I'm looking at the true bearing of point R from point S. So from, I'm imagining that I'm standing at point S, and I've got to work out what's the bearing of this point. So from north, which I've been given this line here, from north, I'm working out what is the angle all the way around so that I've lined up with that point R. So I've got some little bits and pieces here to help me. I can know straight away that this bit here is 180, so that bit's good. So I know that that's going to be part of it. I know that this bit here is 110, so that's good. So I know that I can add on 110, but I need to know this part here. So presumably the other information is going to be useful to me. I can see that in order to work this out, I need to know these two angles, because I remember that the angles in a triangle add up to, so the angle sum of a triangle adds up to 180. So I know this is 75 and I can work this out. These three angles have to add up to 180 because they form a straight line. So 80 plus 30, that gives me 110. So I know that this angle here must be 70 in order for them to add up to 180. Now I can work out what this bit needs to be in order for this triangle to add up to 180. So if I know that these two, 70 and 75, they add up to 145, and I need this to add on to 145 and give me 180, so I can do 180, take 145, I know that this angle here must be 35 degrees. So now I've got my 180, I've got my 110, I've got that last little bit of 35. That's going to give me my full true bearing. Adding it all together, 180 plus 110 plus 35, 325 would be my true bearing. Hope you got that. Some of it can be a bit tricky, so we'll obviously practice it in class. Good luck.